DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas was in the hot seat on Capitol Hill earlier today as lawmakers grilled him on the Biden administration's increasingly failing border policies. Today's hearing comes as a growing number of House Republicans plan to impeach Mayorkas as the border crisis worsens. And instead of leveling with the American people on the reality at our southern border, Mayorkas took the stand today and rambled off the classic White House talking points. Friends, it is time for Hold the Line.
We inherited a broken and dismantled system that is already under strain. It is not built to manage the current levels and types of migratory flows. Only Congress can fix this. Yet, we have effectively managed an unprecedented number of non-citizens seeking to enter the United States.
Welcome to Hold the Line. I'm Buck Sexton. Oh my gosh, Mayorkas with the usual there. They're effectively managing the situation. I'm going to tell you something. First of all, they're not. It's a disaster, and everyone knows it. If you think that illegal immigration is something that we don't want more of in this country, the fundamental problem here is that the Democrats actually like illegal immigration. They want more of it to occur. They are in favor of the systematic violation of our immigration laws for a number of reasons, actually. And at some level, they believe that we owe it to the rest of the world because of all the bad things America does to take in people outside the normal immigration process, illegally, of course, to have people come into this country and then get state benefits given to them, courtesy of Uncle Sam, paid for by the taxpayer, of course, right away, as a form of repairing the damage done to the world that America is responsible for. That's actually a widespread belief among many on the left. And then they tell themselves that, oh, we're a nation of immigrants, which, okay, fine, but what about a nation of illegal immigrants? They never really deal with that issue. And more than anything else, it's the long-term implications of bringing people into the country who are more likely, in their minds, to vote Democrat over the long term, especially when you take into account the realities of a major amnesty that could happen under a future Democrat administration. They already have tried some tricks to get it through without even the real legislation necessary on the Biden administration. That's not going to work. But let's understand that the year of Biden's presidency, year and a few months of Biden's presidency so far, on the issue of immigration has been, at our southern border, an unmitigated disaster. And let's look at what Biden was saying back in the day. Here he was in the first Democratic primary debate on immigration.
What I would do as president is several more things, because things have changed. I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come.
Surge to the border. If you're fleeing oppression, you should come. What does that mean? So does everybody in Venezuela, let's say, tens of millions of people, do they all just get to come to America? Not through any orderly immigration process. They just get to show up? Venezuela is a narco state and a failed state because of socialism, of course. So does that mean, and that's just one country that's not too far away. There are Venezuelan migrants who make their way by land up through Central America to the U.S.-Mexico border. So is that what Biden's saying? The surge, by the way, that they're talking about of resources is happening because of the tidal wave of illegal immigration that's coming after Title 42 is removed, which is supposed to happen on May 23rd. Now, there's a federal judge that's put a temporary restraining order on Title 42, but at some point, it's going to have to be lifted. It's not supposed to be permanent. No one believes it's a permanent state of affairs. So when Title 42 goes, and it will probably be next month, then all of a sudden, one of the primary tools that immigration authorities have had to turn away illegal migrants after they have broken U.S. law and crossed in the country, that will be gone. And so they're going to surge resources. The DHS has put out a memo saying they're surging resources. The purpose of those resources, meaning more personnel, more facilities, more supplies, food, medicine, clothing, etc., for people who come into the country illegally, is to make this easier and more comfortable and a smoother process for illegal migrants, you see. And this isn't just theoretical. You can look at the numbers and it explains very clearly why it is that we think this, because illegal migrants living in the U.S., this is according to a study for the Federation for American immigration reform, says the number of immigrants living in the U.S. increased by approximately 1 million in the first year of the Biden presidency and cost the American taxpayer an additional $9.4 billion. An additional million people in the first year living illegally in this country, in the first year of the Biden presidency, 1 million illegals a year. They'll still tell you, oh, it's only 11 million, maybe 12 now. Well, it doesn't make any sense when you look at the actual numbers year in and year out. And let's also remind ourselves that Democrats would like to actually spend money to make our border less secure. I mean, here's Mayorkas saying that just the discontinuation by the Biden administration of Trump's wall cost American taxpayers big bucks. Watch.
The wall projects, the majority of them rest in the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineers. Those that we ourselves control, I believe that the cost of discontinuing them is approximately $72 million, and I will follow up with you to ensure the accuracy of my statement this morning.
$72 million, just because, they don't like what Trump did. The wall, of course, was and is a useful tool for Border Patrol. It's not a panacea, but nothing is a panacea, and nothing will do all that much if we don't actually have the political will to tell people you're not allowed to come into this country illegal, and if you do, you will be removed from the country. That has to be the policy, or else we don't have a real border. Democrats like to play games with this. Sure, in the recent DHS memo, they say they will strictly enforce immigration law, but then there are all these carve-outs and loopholes. Well, unless, of course, you say you need asylum. If you need asylum, then we have to do a whole different process for you. This is the game that has been played at our southern border for a long time. And then the politics of all this make it quite clear that the Democrats are unserious about this challenge. Here's Mayorkas saying that domestic violence, he's DHS chief, domestic violent extremism poses the greatest terrorism challenge to the homeland. Watch this one.
In your testimony, you discuss how the 2 decades since 9/11, the homeland threat picture has shifted dramatically from foreign terrorists to domestic terrorists, and particularly racially motivated violent extremists who present the most lethal threat to the homeland. What is your current assessment of the domestic terrorism threat to our country?
Mr. Chairman, it is our assessment that domestic violent extremism poses the greatest terrorism-related threat to our homeland. And we have taken a number of steps in the Department of Homeland Security to meet this consequential challenge.
Yes, by that, domestic violent extremists. Like whom? I'm wondering. They should probably just say, the insurrectionists, the Trump voters, because that's what they mean. That's how they direct a lot of their resources, trying to monitor and, in some cases, prosecute for even the crime of parading without a permit inside the Capitol. Very vigorously prosecuted, though, for that. The insurrection, they say. My friends, this Democrat Party is unserious, but does serious damage to the country. Intellectually unserious, but capable of inflicting major wounds on our security and our prosperity, on the rule of law. And that is exactly what they're doing. We'll have more on DHS Secretary Mayorkas' testimony with Senior Legal Fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies, George Fishman, coming up here. But let's talk about protecting your online data, because it's critical. You've got to protect yourself online these days. That's why you need a new privacy and cybersecurity application called Secure. Spelled S-E-K-U-R. Secure is using proprietary encryption and offering secure instant messaging and email. With Secure, all of your communications based on servers and data centers hosted in Switzerland without using any of the big tech platforms. Privacy is a big issue. Without real security, people can read your emails, messages, even your bank information. Secure will never mine your data and never ask for your phone number. You can send emails to your doctor, banker, lawyer, or anyone with total confidence you're not being spied on by your internet provider or big tech. Secure is your solution to stop the constant theft of your digital identity. Costs only $5 for the messenger, only $10 for the messenger and email combination package. Go to secure.com and take back your privacy today. That's SEKUR.com, and use promo code BUCK for 25% off. We'll be right back with more. Hold the line.
We inherited a broken and dismantled system that is already under strain. It is not built to manage the current levels and types of migratory flows. Only Congress can fix it. A significant increase in migrant encounters will strain our system even further, and we will address this challenge successfully. But it will take time, and we need the partnership of Congress, state and local officials, NGOs, and communities to do so.
That was DHS Secretary Mayorkas testifying before Congress earlier today, blaming the Trump administration for the chaotic mess at the southern border, while calling on lawmakers to fix the U.S. immigration system. So how exactly does it expect them to do that? Let's talk to senior legal fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies, George Fishman. George, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
So it seems to me that Mayorkas has put out a pretty unserious plan, you could say, for the border with Mexico. He claims that the Biden administration has been executing a comprehensive and deliberate strategy to secure the border, build a safe and orderly and humane immigration system. I mean, this is at a time when you have all-time record illegal immigrant crossings. So is the Biden administration living in reality here?
Well, they're living, I think, in an alternate reality. They do have a very comprehensive plan, and the plan is to simply release every illegal alien apprehended into the United States, give them work authorization, and then maybe they might show up for their removal hearings 4 or 5 years down the road. So that's their plan. In their view, they've already released over 800,000 illegal aliens apprehended at the border into the United States in the short time of the administration. And to them, that's a success. They've processed them all. They've gotten them out of DHS custody. They've done their job. Now they're just roaming around the country.
Before I get into where this is heading, once Title 42 is rescinded, the CDC authority that allows for some migrants to be expelled after illegally entering the U.S. Now, that's been in place since the Trump administration, since the start of the pandemic. I want to know who is able to, because they'll show this number, and I read the DHS memo and that Mayorkas just put out, and they claim, let's say, that roughly half, it's something like that, it might be 60% of those who enter illegally are repatriated or are not able to stay. But then who is able to stay? I mean, if there's Title 42 authority, what are the determinations that are being made, legally speaking, about who gets to come into the country and stay once they've entered illegally versus who falls under Title 42?
That is totally a creation of the Biden administration. Under the statute, anyone is potentially liable to expulsion under Title 42. It's self-limiting by the Biden administration which groups of aliens they're exempting from Title 42, whether it's on a categorical basis, unaccompanied minors we exempt from Title 42, or whether they do it on a case-by-case basis. If they wanted to, the Biden administration, the Centers for Disease Control, could have it applied to whomever they want to who is attempting to enter the U.S.
And now, once Title 42 goes, everyone understands, who's paying attention to this issue, there's pretty much universal agreement, I think, that the numbers are going to go up. Here's Mayorkas saying, oh yeah, no, they're getting ready for it, watch.
We are mindful that there can be an increase in migratory flows encountered at our southern border should Title 42 come to an end, as the CDC has determined it needs to do by May 23rd.
So it's so much going on here. I mean, again, in this DHS memo that was put out, which is fascinating, because in it, Mayorkas says things like, we're going to strictly enforce our immigration laws. Yeah, sure, that's really credible, because they're so strict about them. But the part of this I thought was interesting was that there was a change in the way they're going to do asylum, where they're instead of people having to go to an immigration court to make their asylum case, they're saying in this DHS memo that they're going to forward deploy Customs and Immigration Service officers who will be able to make essentially on the spot asylum determinations. Like, how is that supposed to work?
The base reason we have the crisis at the border is that whenever DHS tries to remove an alien apprehended at the border through expedited removal, if the alien claims a fear of return to their home country, they get an interview before an asylum officer. That's in the statute. But what's happened is that USCIS asylum officers have been saying 80 to 90% of the time, oh yeah, you have a credible fear of persecution. 80 to 90% of the time, that's when they get the right to go before an immigration judge years in the future and are released into the United States. The recent regulation by USCIS is going to allow the same asylum officers who grant credible fear determinations 80 to 90% of the time, they'll now, in addition, be able to say, oh yeah, and we'll give you asylum too. While we're at it, you won't even have to go before an immigration judge. I'll grant you asylum. And so that's the solution to the problem. There certainly will be a smaller backlog in immigration court if asylum officers grant everyone asylum before they even have to go to an immigration court. To the Biden administration, that's a success.
And Mayorkas also said today that if they're expecting up to 18,000, they call them encounters. I mean, it's apprehensions, right? It's people entering the country illegally. This term encounter, I think, is a euphemism, and intentionally so. They're at about 5,000 to 6,000 now. I think it's 8,000 to 9,000 now. They say they can't really handle more than 5,000 or 6,000, according to Border Patrol folks I've spoken to in recent weeks. They're expecting 18,000. Watch this.
The 18,000 is not projected. As I mentioned, we just built that scenario so that we can plan for different scenarios. We scale it at different levels and plan accordingly to be able to ensure that our preparations, our extensive preparations, are comprehensive. There is no question that if we encounter 18,000 people in a single day, that will seriously strain our capabilities.
I mean, I've been told that Border Patrol is just going to have to wave people through. 18,000 just means it's like they can't even handle it.
When I was at DHS in 2018, when 2,000 were coming across a day, we were in crisis mode. I could never have thought in a million years it would be 8,000 or 18,000. And the reason is it's the alien smugglers are telling prospective clients in other countries, and it's not puffery, it's accurate, we'll get you to the US and then you're home free. Whether it's open borders or not, you just claim, you go out, don't try to hide, find the Border Patrol officer, surrender to them, and say, I fear return. You're going to be released into the United States with work authorization and told, yeah, show up in a few years for your immigration court proceeding. Mayorkas says the system isn't built to handle current levels. Well, we wouldn't have these current levels if the administration were more serious about immigration enforcement. It's all this pull factor of everyone realizes how easy it is to get in.
Oh, everyone I talk to down there, George, they say if the incentives don't change, the problem just gets worse. Mm-hmm. Thanks for being with us. Appreciate the expertise today.
Thanks so much.
Elon Musk is likely to soon be the owner of Twitter in a little bit of time, but that isn't stopping him from criticizing the company's employees for their obvious political bias. We'll have more on that with the First TV's TNLO when we return. Let's talk about protecting your home. Look, home title theft. How does that even work, right? Well, believe it or not, your home's title is online. So cyber thieves can get you thrown off your home title by using a quick claim deed. They forge your signature, then they take out loans as the owner of your new home. You're left with the payments, and you might not even find out until you get an eviction notice. This is a very rapidly growing crime. You're not covered by homeowners insurance or common identity theft programs. That's why you need Home Title Lock. They've earned my trust. Home Title Lock will mobilize to help shut down any tampering with your home's title online. Go right now, register your address and see if you're already a victim of this crime and don't even know it. And tell them Buck Sexton sent you when you get the listener discount. HomeTitleLock.com, that's HomeTitleLock.com. TNLO stops by shortly.
Elon made it clear in public that a large part of the reason he bought the platform was because of our moderation policies and disagreements in how we deal with health. This puts Twitter service and trust and safety, as well as anybody who cares about health on the platform, in a very difficult position.
Elon Musk made it clear when he first put his bid in to purchase Twitter that protecting the free speech of the platform's users and bringing an end to heavy-handed censorship would be his top priority. Seems like a whole bunch of people over at Twitter think that's a scary idea. It's about health. With Twitter soon to be under the control of Musk, employees inside that place are losing their collective minds over critical statements that Musk has made just over the past 24 hours. In an article published today, the Washington Post claimed, quote, personal attacks from Musk are a nightmare scenario for Twitter employees who in recent weeks have repeatedly expressed concerns in interviews and at a company-wide town hall that they could be targeted by the world's richest man. So what are Twitter execs and employees so afraid of? Joining me now, drop some truth bombs. The First TV's Tina Lowe. Tina, good to see you.
Hey, Bob.
They are actually having cry sessions, right? I mean, there's enough reporting now, there's enough people, and it's remarkable because I think that the left, Democrats, interchangeable, I think that they would have pushed back on the notion before this that they are actively in favor of political censorship, as a general principle. And now they're straight up crying when they lose the right to politically censor. So I don't think that's an argument they could even make anymore.
I mean, it does remind me of being on a college campus after Donald Trump won in 2016, because I was there and I had a professor cry and cancel an entire day of class for that. Okay, before we even talk about the Clintons that Musk is buying Twitter from, let's just talk about the fact that Twitter is a publicly traded company. We know that all of this gets regulated through the SEC, which already doesn't like Musk. Twitter is open to being purchased. That is what being publicly traded requires. You have to keep a certain amount of information public. You have to be open for public bids, where the interests of the stakeholders, which include everyone who has a share, even if it's only one share on Robinhood, must be valued by the board. In this case, a board that doesn't actually use Twitter. But then from there, no one really complained when BlackRock was the second largest owner of Twitter shares. BlackRock that currently pays up to 20 to 50% higher than home listing prices in cash, just so that way they can monopolize the home housing market. No one cared that MBS's cousin, a Saudi billionaire prince, was one of the largest share owners of Twitter. Nobody cared about any of that. All they care about is top Obama donor who's dedicated his life to combating climate change, specifically because he values free speech, because he thinks that you shouldn't take a president offline, because he thinks that the Babylon Bee shouldn't be silenced because they made a joke about Rachel Levine, who was born a man, being called a man. That
Tech writer at the Washington Post,
where the truth lies.
Indeed. Tech writer at the Washington Post, Will Oremus, tweeted this out this morning. Imagine getting up and going to work for a company whose new owner is systematically attacking your colleagues for his 84 million followers in public on the site you work for and knowing you might be next. This is the worst case scenario Twitter employees feared. I mean, their tears are very amusing, but also it should be really disconcerting, I think, to everybody, Tina, that these people have been, and I mean this, the employees at Twitter, and they're also at Facebook, by the way, and YouTube and Google and elsewhere, they've had an enormous influence on American politics and discourse stretching back now for years, and they're lunatics.
Oh, of course. And it's not there was this discussion, specifically among the commentariat, about something, inducing or directing harassment. And the Washington Post, the Bezos-owned Washington Post, should know, because that's what Taylor Lorenz did last week with the account behind Libs of TikTok. Directed a lot of harassment by tying the owner of Libs of TikTok, her personal home address, into a piece from, one of the most prestigious newspapers in the entire world. And so now that the shoe is on the other foot, one of the people who was signal boosted by the Washington Post as being a victim of quote unquote harassment was Vijaya Gad, who was the head of trust legal policy at Twitter. been on Joe Rogan's show with Jack Dorsey. This is not a private citizen. This is someone who has gone forward as a not just tastemaker for the brand, but was the specific person in charge of, silencing the Hunter Biden laptop story. And also by she was also responsible for taking Trump off Twitter after January 6th. Yet, deciding to publicly criticize the Hunter Biden laptop decisions in very, muted, sober terms, that is being coded as harassment. Term harassment doesn't mean anything anymore in corporate media, and it doesn't actually help decode what is going to happen to Twitter in the future.
Jack Dorsey, former CEO and founder of Twitter, expressed his opinion on the Elon era they're entering with this. Elon's goal of creating a platform that is maximally trusted and broadly inclusive is the right one. This is also Paraga's goal and why I chose him. Thank you for getting the company out of an impossible situation. This is the right path. I believe it with all my heart. I think he's partially right here, but I don't think that Paraga's goal was free speech. I think that's been made quite clear. The soon-to-be, I believe, former CEO.
I think so too. It's, Jack Dorsey and credit all of these big social media giant founders who created all these, they're all kind of weirdos and out of necessity. Jack Dorsey is someone who talks about eating 5 meals a week and walking to work 5 miles and taking ice baths, whatever. I do think a small part of it has to do with maintaining sanity over a lot of Silicon Valley millennials that you have to take care of in a multinational conglomerate with investors from different countries. It's a very stressful job, right? Jack right now wants to focus on Square. He wants to not be a part of the Twitter chaos. And it's why you've seen, as though this is 2004, people posting on their MySpace pages the songs that they're feeling at the moment. Everyone has been trying to figure out what Jack Dorsey actually wants out of Twitter. And I think with Paraga, it might not even be fealty to Paraga or faith in Paraga at any point, but rather the hope that this is not going to become chaos, that you will not have people currently at Twitter shredding documents before Elon Musk gets to take over. Because the fact is that he can do, a truth commission to look back to how exactly were the decisions made behind not just the big ticket items, not just behind Trump, Hunter Biden, whatever, but shadow banning. Years of people thinking that their viewership was suppressed, years of people thinking that their follower count was suppressed, because that can come out.
Have you had a boost? Have you had a boost in followers the last couple of days, by the way?
So I don't know if I'm high profile enough to have had a boost, and I've been having Wi-Fi problems, but I have been hearing that everyone else has been having a boost. So it would not shock me if the average slightly right of center follower having major boosts.
Yep, there's some boosts going on. Tina, great to see you.
Thank you, Buck.
Twitter isn't the only outlet that has been busted for censoring conservatives. Coming up after the break, Citizens United President David Bossie explains how television giant DirecTV is refusing to air advertisements for his group's latest documentary. We'll be right back. Although Twitter makes the most headlines when it comes to big tech censorship, it's not the only place where conservatives are being silenced. According to Citizens United, satellite TV giant DirecTV is refusing to air advertisements for their latest documentary, which exposes how Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg influenced the 2020 election. Breitbart reported that Citizens United Foundation learned on April 5th that DirecTV would not run advertising for the documentary, which details just how Mark Zuckerberg spent $400 million for the 2020 election efforts to quash former President Trump and bolster then candidate Joe Biden. Joining now, President of Citizens United, David Bossie. David, thanks for coming back. Good to see you.
Thanks for having me back. Appreciate it.
So just explain this to me. I mean, you guys aren't getting any explanation as to why they're not allowing your ads to run, right? What is the situation here? How did this happen?
Well, we placed a national television buy for our film Rigged, and we do that regularly for lots of our films over many, many years. And it was one of my films called Hillary the Movie back in 2010 that we won at the United States Supreme Court, Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission, for the very right to go on television and advertise our movies. So it's kind of funny that both Comcast, NBC censor our ads, and now this week DirecTV, because they don't want the American people. This is really the rub here, in my opinion. If the American people don't hear from the mainstream corporate biased media every day that it was a perfect election, the most secure election of our lifetime, if they present them with any evidence that there may have been something wrong, it destroys the narrative that they have spent the last 18 months trying to damage and ruin Donald Trump with. That's a narrative that they cannot allow to be broken. So that's why I believe that they censor us.
You know, you're not getting explanations about why they're censoring you. I mean, they're not really telling you. Apparently, they just think they can get away with this stuff. Your vice president and general counsel, Michael Booz, said when the account representative for the media buy firm inquired as to why DirecTV refused to air the advertisements, the only explanation given was that the company's standards and practices department isn't client-facing. I mean, what is that even supposed to mean, David? Like,
But with that, I think we all know what that means. That means go take a hike. That means lots of vernacular that could be thrown out there. But that was we don't care what your opinion is. We're not going to discuss it with you because we control the airwaves, and we will decide what is on our air, not the consumer, not the people. And you know what? We're going to fight them. We're going to continue to fight them. And it's fighting them through shows like this, making sure the American people understand, hey, DirecTV censors conservatives. How about you go use another station if you want to? You know, use another Dish is just as good as DirecTV. They're not censoring us. They have us up on nationally across this country, advertising our film. So look, Facebook, here's the funny part. Facebook allows our ads. It's a movie about Mark Zuckerberg. Facebook isn't, because they knew they had a problem. Because Mark Zuckerberg threw up his hands and said, after the movie came out, I will no longer fund election activities, because the movie brought a lot of pressure to him, and the sunlight that is a great disinfectant made him announce that he was no longer going to do that. But Facebook couldn't censor us as well, because they knew they would have trouble.
Are there any legal options that Citizens United may pursue here based on, I don't know, FCC regulation perhaps? People always they say, oh, it's a private company, it can do what it wants. We'll get to Twitter maybe in a second about how they're going to change their tune on that one. But that's actually, I work in the radio business, as you know. There's a lot of stuff that you can't just do. There's a lot of regulation and restriction in radio and cable TV. Is there a legal component possibly you're considering, or what's the next step?
Absolutely. My lawyers are looking at every single option, and including going to court and suing them. We have done this before, and by the way, we're a little bit schooled in this area. Citizens United versus the Federal Election Commission was the biggest First Amendment victory in 100 years at the United States Supreme Court when we won in 2010. It took me 6 years from the concept of our case to the victory, but we are dedicated to protecting all American free speech, not just conservatives, but everyone's free speech. And that's why we take these fights on. And these guys, they think that they could just push you around because you're some little conservative group. Well, they might have pushed the wrong people.
Can I just ask, for everyone watching, Citizens United, I'm sure, as you well know, the left spits out those words now like, oh, ever since the Citizens United decision, Kim Jong-un can just buy our elections, right? He can send money in. Foreign dictators can, they've gone crazy about this. I know I'm making you go back into what was years and years in the making for that decision. What was, I remember from the Supreme Court decision at the time that the Solicitor General, I believe, for the Obama administration was taking the position that they could ban books, right, before an election within a 90-day window or a 60-day window. What was really at heart with the Citizens United case?
No, that's exactly what they said. They said the federal government can ban documentary films, its advertising, and books. No one ever thought that in the United States government would take the position that they could ban books. I mean, book burning, book banning is not something that we look kindly upon here in the United States. And that's what they said then. And it's now you look back 12 years later, and you look what people are doing today. The censorship is unbelievable. What big tech, what Google, what Facebook, what Twitter has been doing to people, conservatives over the last many years, including President Trump, is just disgusting.
Speaking of big tech and banning books, Matt Walsh, guy I used to work with, good guy for the Daily Wire, he has he's had Amazon coming after him. He wrote a children's book that I believe is something about the walrus. I forget what it's called, but anyway, there are some transgender themes, and transgender activism is at the heart of it at some level. And Amazon employees flipped out about this. It challenges the narrative of transgender activism. It was not appropriate, according to Amazon employees. Check this out. There's actual video of Amazon employees freaking out about this book that Matt Walsh wrote. Watch.
It's bad faith. It's basically abuse of Amazon systems, and they're intentionally, when I say they, I mean like Matt Walsh and his publishing company and other people like him are taking advantage of Amazon and how the Amazon algorithms work to promote their particular brand of hate and harm on the community.
I mean, they really do have little Zoom calls where they cry about conservative books, especially a conservative children's book like this one.
I got to be honest with you. That's absolutely atrocious. Look, what they are doing to our kids today, between CRT and this transgender war, that K through 3, they want to jam these ideas, these thoughts, and have these conversations that are totally out of bounds for teachers to be having with little kids. And that's something for parents to do. What the left has done is lost their collective minds. They don't understand common sense. The American people get it. And that's one of the reasons why this November, they got a big problem coming, because common sense is going to prevail.
David, always appreciate seeing you. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Masked maniac threatens unmasked employees at Costco. We'll have that viral video for you in quick hits and more. Stay with us. Dr. Fauci declares that America is out of the pandemic phase, and a viral video shows the dangerous psychological effect that masking has had on some libs. Those stories on quick hits right now. Let's get to it. If you are familiar with any of my work over the last 2 years, you know that I think Dr. Fauci is the absolute worst. I think that he is a partisan hack. I think he's been wrong constantly. I think he shows no humility whatsoever, even in the face of being wrong constantly. He's a megalomaniac. He is a partisan hitman for the left. It is appalling what this guy has done to the country. Never apologized for the disastrous, completely unnecessary, completely unhelpful lockdowns. Never admitted that mask mandates are idiotic. Never admitted that they completely overstated the effectiveness of the vaccine to stop the spread. And at every stage of the pandemic, Fauci was trying to find a way to assert more authority and control. He never told people to back off of things. He never said, hold on a second, maybe liberty, maybe the Constitution should actually be taken into account. Could care less. Do what he says or else, peasant. That was his attitude. Libs loved it, of course. They view him as essential to Joe Biden becoming the president of the United States, right? Fauci is finally, now that people are really sick of it, don't want to listen to this crap anymore. Yeah, there are some double-masked libs walking around outside, and it's pathetic, but pretty much everybody else is saying this is absurd. Fauci is now willing to announce that we're out of the pandemic phase. Oh, thank you, Anthony. Watch.
We are certainly right now in this country out of the pandemic phase. Namely, we don't have 900,000 new infections a day and tens and tens and tens of thousands of hospitalizations and thousands of deaths. We are at a low level right now. So if you're saying, are we out of the pandemic phase in this country? We are.
I mean, as if we need him to tell us that. Fauci is the worst. The absolute worst. I'm just going to say, this guy is the worst. And yet he's still running around doing things. And it's because of Anthony Fauci and people like him that you have individuals who think that other human beings should never be allowed to breathe normally again. And they're such lunatics now that they're actually becoming violent because, oh my gosh, someone's unmasked around me. Here is a guy, of course, with a mask on, threatening an unmasked employee at a Costco, threatening to pepper spray them because they're not wearing masks.
It started. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my goodness!
Stop! You're getting away. I'll walk you here. You're threatening my life. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do this. I'm not calling cops on you. Yeah?
Should they stop them?
Stay away, sir. Stay away. I'm not getting near you. You're unmasked. Is that pepper spray? Yes. Okay. Sir, I need you to put that away. We're in a public place right now. Yep. Stay away. I'm going to stay away. Thank you. You can't be threatening people here with pepper spray, okay? Do you understand that?
Threatening to use pepper spray on an employee of Costco because he's unmasked, and he's not required to be masked, but this guy is a lunatic. But Fauci would probably say, well, it's good that he takes the virus so seriously. Twitter is going to be an interesting place now that there's actually going to be some reality and some oversight. They're trying to explain why people like me, I mean, I have tens of thousands of new followers. What's happened? Twitter explains, they say, we've been looking into recent fluctuations in follower counts. These fluctuations appear to have largely have been a result of an increase in new account creation and deactivation. Let me say, bullcrap. They're messing with the algorithm because they know they're about to get caught and people are going to realize what's going on here. Yeah, appear largely, they should have the answer. That's it for tonight's Hold the Line. The No Spin News with Bill O'Reilly is next. Shields high.